Well, I'm sure there's a certain feeling that comes with that interaction, whether it be disappointment, sadness, or maybe even fear. But no matter the feeling that comes with the interaction, we are all aware of America's large homeless population. But do many of you think about the abundance of mental illness that comes with that homeless population? According to the National Coalition for the Homeless, about 20 to 25% of the homeless population in the United States suffers from a severe mental illness. In comparison, only about 6% of the general U.S. population suffers from a severe mental illness. The homeless community is not only riddled with mental illness, but they also receive little to no funding for mental health. Many people are homeless not because they're chronically lazy, but rather they are mentally ill and are receiving no treatment for that illness. People tend to ignore the homeless population because they view these individuals as panhandlers. Now, some stereotypes of homeless individuals may be true, but some people on the street would prosper with proper mental health care. So today, I'm going to explain to you why the U.S. homeless population should receive more mental health care funding. So I know many of you may be thinking, why should we even bother funding mental health care for people that probably don't have jobs and are not contributing to the economy whatsoever? Well, to that I say that homeless individuals are just as important as the top 1% of this population. So an online article, The Mentally Ill Homeless, it is stated that the main cause of homelessness in the United States is mental illness. An unstable living situation can be very detrimental to someone with a severe mental health state. So before going into greater detail about how important a stable living situation is for someone with a mental illness and or receiving treatment for that illness, let's have a quick history lesson. So during the 1980s, President Ronald Reagan and his administration had the decision to focus their policy rather than from social to fiscal. So according to Alexander Thomas, member of Northeastern University's Sociology Department, President Reagan pursued policy towards treatment of mental illness that satisfied special interest groups and the business community. In trying to please the financial end of this topic, President Reagan forgot the greater issue at hand, which is mental health care treatment. During the time in which President Reagan was in the White House, their funding for mental health in the United States declined rapidly. So Theodore Mamer of Yale University explains that between 1977 and 1980, the share of gross national product devoted to mental health expenses decreased by 28%, and the funding since then has only declined. So although there was a huge decrease in the public mental health sector, the private mental health sector grew rather than decreased, which meant if you have proper health insurance, you could receive treatment no problem, and it's still like that. But this isn't the case for everyone, and contrary to popular belief, many individuals who are homeless that suffer from a severe mental illness are willing to receive treatment but are unable to due to lack of funding. So we want these individuals to be off our streets, and we want them to get jobs, but we don't provide them with the resources to improve their mental health state so they can do what we want them to do. Mental health care was often ignored in the Reagan administration, and things haven't changed that much. Marion Jones, author of Creating a Science of Homelessness, stated that homelessness began to reemerge in the early 1980s as a result of the Reagan administration. Many cases of homelessness during his administration may have been prevented if funding just wasn't cut. Reagan's lack of attention to mental health care for the public led to many people ending up on the street. But before people ended up homeless, where were their families, and why didn't they try to get them help? Well, someone with a severe mental illness may have trouble maintaining stable relationships that would lead them to getting treatment. So this therefore causes further isolation and the absence of treatment for these individuals. This very absence of treatment leads to the stigma of homeless individuals and the increase of arrests within the population. Violent tendencies are not uncommon for someone with a mental illness, and especially those who believe the delusions that their brains create, like someone with schizophrenia. So if an individual isn't being violent, other times they are often arrested for bothersome behavior, like talking to someone who isn't actually there. Mentally ill homeless individuals who are arrested are thrown into the criminal justice system rather than the mental health care system, where they would receive proper treatment. Dr. Alexander Blau of Getting Mental Health Care Where It Is Needed explains if we had a more robust mental health care system and better funding with less stigma, then people could get attention before they commit horrible acts. So now I want to share with you the story of Joseph G. Christopher. So Joseph G. Christopher was never homeless in his lifetime, but the mental health care system didn't do him justice. So who is Joseph G. Christopher? Joseph G. Christopher was a resident of Buffalo, New York, where in 1980 he was given the name the .22 caliber killer. Many people who have heard of Joseph G. Christopher don't know that he suffered from paranoid schizophrenia. As stated in an online article, The Killer with Two Names, Joseph Christopher began to exhibit paranoid behavior a few years after his father passed away. So he knew something was wrong with him, so he tried to check himself into Buffalo Psychiatric Center, but the facility turned him away because he didn't pose a threat to himself or others at the time. So at this time, the psychiatric facility was actually undergoing downsizing, so this is why they turned Christopher away so quickly. So I don't know if you made the connection quite yet, but during the time in which he tried to check himself into the psych ward, Reagan was currently cutting mental health care in the United States. So just 2 weeks after Joseph G. Christopher tried to check himself into the Buffalo Psychiatric Center, he began his killing spree. Although this man wasn't homeless, his horrible actions, like many of his homeless counterparts, could have been prevented if he just received proper treatment. If he would have gotten treatment, then maybe he wouldn't have killed over 10 people. Mental health care is important for everyone, but it is extremely important for those who are homeless. They deserve a fair chance at life, and their mental disorders, which are not chosen, shouldn't get in their way. We as a society should help the homeless population As a society, we should help decrease the homeless population by increasing their mental health care. Like Jack Tsai and his colleagues wrote in Homelessness as a Public Problem, understanding the behavioral needs for the homeless population and devoting policies to address their needs are key in preventing and ending homelessness. We should no longer turn a blind eye to the homeless community, but rather help them get on their feet.